Hello. Hey, everybody, I'm Michel. Nice to see you.
Michelle, before I start pestering with you with questions on policy and budget cuts, I want us to go softer into a little bit of, the experiences you've had by growing up in a farm, by working so closely with farmers as a restaurant owner. And I want you, I want you to tell us a little bit about the link between sustainable agriculture, flavor, and nutrition.
So I, from as far back as I can remember, I used to get shipped down to my grandfather's farm in Morley, Missouri, from Chicago every summer for about 8 weeks with my older brother and many of our cousins to work my grandfather's farm. And I learned how to grow things, how to raise things, how to take the life of things, turn them into something delicious before I even got into high school. So to me, it was like just a normal way of living. And it's why I'm a chef today. If I didn't do that, I really don't know where I would be. Maybe jail, I don't know. I barely graduated high school, so I'm not an academic. But the interesting thing for me is it felt like something that I just assumed other kids were raised the way I was raised. I just assumed it because it was so simple and it was so natural and it was so easy. Everything made sense without fancy words, without labels, without concepts. It made sense. So what I've learned over the years of struggling through trying to, in the early days, in the late 70s and early 1980s, taking petty cash from the restaurant, paying farmers in advance half the crop value so that they had crop insurance, because I understood that as someone who worked on a struggling farm, and then had to go pick the stuff at the end of the season to get the stuff to my restaurant, because these were corn and soy growers growing tomatoes for me because I paid them in advance, right? It's different today. You can find heirloom tomatoes in a Piggly Wiggly now. So we've come a long way. We've come a long way. And all of my cousins, all of my aunts and uncles on my mother's side of the family who were still actively involved in farming lived very long lives, were very fit because they ate what they grew. They didn't know the word organic farming. They couldn't afford pesticides or those inputs, so we composted, we did all those. It was just normal stuff for them, but they were healthy. They were all healthy. I was stunned when I got into the professional food world and saw the food that was coming in the back door of these restaurants. And that's what led to my first form of advocacy, paying farmers in advance, and then getting me into all of the messes I've got into since then, because almost everything that we suffer these days that's some kind of an inequity or an inequality starts with lack of access, fair, equitable access to food, and for those who grow it, lack of fair, equitable access to equitable supply chains so that they have a market like what Pierre was talking about with this Fonio project.
Thank you. Yeah, it is all tied together, right? It's been 16 years since Wholesome Wave introduced, 16, right?
18.
18.
And we've been at it for a while.
Okay.
I feel like the farmer's commercial. You know, the guy who gets up there, farmer's insurance, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. It's been 18 years, yeah.
18 years since Wholesome Wave introduced Double Up Food Box, this incentive that doubles what you can get out of SNAP benefits for fresh veggies and fruit. And I guess then it's been 8 years since GOSNIP was made permanent. I want you to speak a little bit about where produce prescription programs are today nationwide, and where does the political support for making it federal everywhere stand? And what is produce prescription? So for everyone here.
Yeah, so produce prescription, the concept of a produce prescription is in a clinical setting, a prescriber, a doctor, a nurse practitioner, somebody who's licensed to prescribe, can see a patient who is either struggling with, recently diagnosed, or at risk of contracting a diet-related disease. So it's usually 2 or more comorbidities for someone trending. But if somebody is a qualifying patient, they then can be given prescriptions from the nutritionist who coaches them on how to use the prescription so that they can then get the servings of fruits and vegetables they need to better manage the diet-related disease or to prevent the diet-related disease in the first place. We fielded the first clinical produce prescription programs in 2009, and now they're in over 35 states in various forms of iteration. In 22 of the states, they're clinical based, where there's a clinical partner. There are groups in some states that are doing produce prescriptions simply as a voucher system to give people extra money to spend on fruits and vegetables, but it doesn't include the diagnosis, the prescription, and then tracking the biometrics and other factors that can build an evidence base that can lead to that federal policy. But we're getting closer than ever. Recently, we convened a National Produce Prescription Collaborative back in 2019, and right now that we're on the second set of Medicaid money through Indian Health Services in tribal communities to provide produce prescription for indigenous communities. And going into the second year for the Veterans Administration, these are important pilots because they are Medicaid funding going to food benefits that can then be applied to the biometric outcomes of that activity. It's a longer road to hoe. For nutrition incentives, when we started them in 2007, they were not legal. You could not market something to a SNAP consumer that wasn't available to everybody. We couldn't afford that. So we worked with the George W. Bush administration to make it legal. Became a federally funded pilot in 2014 during the Obama administration, became permanent and named after Gus in 2018 during the first Trump administration, and it's actually included in the MAHA platform right now. So that's a timeline from 2007 to now. That's what it took for nutrition incentives. We've proven that it's nonpartisan because a lot of the evidence that we use, combination of storytelling, which is very, very important, as Kathleen and Crystal were talking about earlier, but also farmers putting more land in production, grocery retailers selling more produce, which is their highest margin, but their biggest risk. People performing better at school, people performing better at work because they were eating better food. It was a multi-stakeholder argument that has been able to move through all those administrations. I think there's great hope now for produce prescriptions because with this administration talking so much about food as medicine, there's an actual cohort of Americans who used to not want to talk about it, frankly, because they felt that they were going to be painted as a progressive if they talked about it, and now they're talking about it. So there's a much broader public awareness now, and I think more constituent support for these concepts.
When you say there's more hope for it, you mean like in terms of gaining federal dollars so that it's all covered by Medicaid?
Who knows? I mean, that's our intention. That is our intention. It's just such a squirrely environment right now because there are no guardrails of any kind. It's tough to indicate, but in the past administration, I don't know how many people were at the Food as Medicine convening at HHS, and I was very disappointed in that meeting. The deputy secretary asked each of the 6 heads of the different departments of HHS what excited them about food as medicine, and everybody except for the FDA basically said, we look forward to building the evidence base. And that is just such a cop-out to me, because there are Oxford studies, NHANES studies, JAMA studies, Framingham-style size studies happening over decades that demonstrate that simply increasing your consumption of fruits and vegetables reduces your risk of contracting, suffering, or dying from 5 diet-related diseases. We don't need more evidence, we need action.
We're not done yet.
No, I'm good.
Sorry, too close.
Sorry.
So, with $1 billion gone, terminating LFPA, help me out, local food purchase agreements.
Yes.
Local food that was going to food banks, and then like the termination also of the past version of local food for schools. How do you leverage, like you and your team at Wholesome Wave, how do you leverage the opportunity that we're having with the Maha discourse, with this kind of contradictory actions? Like, how do you give it to them straight? Well,
it's a whack-a-mole environment, and the one thing that never changes in any environment is that we all have to eat, or we perish. All of us. Doesn't matter what our ideology is. Doesn't matter from where we came or to whom we pray, what color our skin, whatever. We have to do this, and there's economic opportunity in every decision that somebody makes when it comes to food. And there's economic consequence in making those same decisions. And again, Crystal and others have spoken pretty eloquently and clearly about the financial cost of diet-related disease. There's only one thing that causes diet-related disease, and that's food, right? So we look at LFPA and LFS, local food sourcing, local food procurement. It was an easy, I think it was a mistaken target. I think when Musk and his team came in, they used AI to scrub all the government grant programs. And they had their 113 keywords that were focused on DEI type stuff. And both of those programs were pretty heavy with that language, and that just made them an easy target. I think for this administration, there's a brief opportunity, and our intention is this. One of the things that we're doing at Wholesome Wave, the way we succeeded with the nutrition incentives going from illegal to permanent through 4 administrations ruled by both sides of the aisle, we achieved that by working in communities, having members of Congress and agency heads see nutrition incentives working in their communities, students doing better at school, people calling in sick less at work, farmers making more money, retailers making more money, buying transplanters, et cetera. Kids from Title I grade schools, Rayleigh's Market in Sacramento hires specifically kids from Title I grade schools to give them opportunity, and kids who had access to nutrition incentives and produce prescriptions were doing better at work. So these were all arguments that happened in the places that they called home. We're now convening the national culinary community. You guys have talked about us a couple of times, how we can create healthy recipes when we're looking at the periodic table for food and all that good. We're more than a pretty face that can cook delicious stuff and give you a recipe. I convened the James Beard boot camps for policy and change. I co-founded them with Eric Kessler about 13 years ago, where we get chefs together to help them understand the power of their actual voice, that they are a taxpayer, a business owner, a business leader, an employer, an influencer in the community that they call home, not just a recipe provider. And that when people, every year there's a Edelman Trust Barometer, and when it comes to issues around food, chefs are always in the top 75% of who's most trusted when it comes to these issues. And it's because when we open our door, we welcome everybody first. Everyone's welcome. We don't have signs saying MAGA not welcome, AOC not welcome, independents not welcome. Everybody's welcome. We just want to make them all happy. And then when they have a problem with food or a question about food, is organic real? Michelle, my daughter married a vegan. What do I do? You know, they come to us because they know we'll tell them the truth, and we'll tell them in using language they can understand. And the culinary community now is connecting in 7 states with the farming community, all conservative farmers, to go to the administration and say, hey, you guys kind of goofed.
Can you mention the state?
Huh?
Can you mention the states?
I can. Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, Colorado, California, and Washington. And we were just in the pilot when all this crap hit the fan, but we can't not do something. And we're just going to basically say with the argument, you want to make America healthy again, you want to make America great again. What better way to do that than to provide my hard-earned taxpayer dollars to go to a farmer so that grade school kids can have Texas-grown, Arkansas-grown, Louisiana-grown food on their plate so that our low-income neighbors who fell on hard times can continue to feed their kids, their families, healthy food, support local farmers, self-reliance, self-resilience. All of these things are in that type of approach. Call it whatever you want, but one of the mistakes I think the movement has been making is they've been going to this administration and say, bring back LFPA. That would be like going to Cory Booker if he won the next election saying, bring back the Trump tax cuts. The answer is going to be no. It's going to be no. Don't ask somebody to bring back something that they just eliminated from who they now have been calling the enemy. Let it be their idea, and that's the approach that we're taking.
On that note, the administration did bring back, in some form, local food for schools. Do you see it happening in a different, like that they bring back in a different shape LFPA?
I think what would happen here, because LFPA was really being driven through public institutions, health departments, et cetera, right? The state's departments of agriculture are perfectly capable of handling these types of grant programs if the staff's not cut. Just, you know, the whack-a-mole nature of what we're talking about is a little bit uncertain, no doubt about it. But when you look at the fact that a good percentage of food growers in this country that were actually benefiting from LFPA are conservative farmers, and they're a significant constituent of the Republican Party, it's in the interest of that party to restore this. And it's it's not difficult to scenario plan in an environment where there are squishy guardrails to say, here's a sector of federal workers that aren't going to get cut because we need to get this money back to farmers. Rather than big giant relief piles for like a couple of commodities, something that actually really supports that local living economy, that provides the self-reliance that Make America Great Again is supposed to be all about. So we're just going to use that language. We're telling the truth in the way that they tend to think about things, and it is true. Imagine if every grade school kid could have local produce on their plate for lunch tomorrow. That would be making America great again. I'm telling the truth.
We still need to talk about addressing inequities in the farming systems, right? And in the farming system, in the access of farmers of all demographics to the same resources. So I want to ask you, like, what are some of the policies, what tools do we have to make sure that food is medicine, and it's not like, but not for everyone, right? That these benefits really go the furthest?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's like two questions in a way, if I'm hearing it correctly. One is lack of equity in farming for agricultural producers, and then the other is how does that connect with making sure that the maximum benefit gets to those who need it that are a patient or someone who's trying to not become a patient. Is that, was that, or, yeah, am I understanding the question or no?
Yeah, I'm sorry, maybe I made it a little bit tangled up, but yeah, it's meant for both, like how it can make, how can it reach the most farmers in an equitable way?
Right.
And also, of course, the recipients of food is medicine programs with this big cuts to our healthcare system, with the cuts to SNAP, how can we like infiltrate tools and guardrails that ensure that it is for everyone, that it does make America great again?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, the tools for inequity in farming, I thought, I didn't think it was the best approach for the USDA to put equity language in agricultural programs that were meant to provide public dollars to buy in-state grown food and put it into public grade schools. If you want better equity in farming, there are USDA lending boards in almost every county in the country, and almost everybody on those boards is white. Now, if I go to get a loan, and I've been in business for 2 or 3 generations, and I don't bring collateral, and I've paid back loans in the past, and I go to get a loan, I have a pretty good chance of getting a loan as a farmer. If you go with the same record, you have less of a chance. If Pierre goes, he doesn't have a chance. If Sean Sherman goes, he doesn't have a chance. There's a lot of bias in these boards. And to me, if you're going to be an administration that's going to be about being more equitable when it comes to our food system, you have to look at that level of what's preventing people from getting the capital that they need to put more land in production, buy a transplanter, actually get some income, because it's so funny. Any good farmer will tell you, we put the seeds in the ground, we put the plants in the ground, and then we pray. Because they paid for the seeds, they paid for the plants, they paid for the transplanter, the gas to run the tractor, fixing the tractor, they're watering, they're managing pests, they're managing weeds, they're doing all that stuff, and they don't get their money until November or December. And they're out of pocket starting in February, right? So those are the places where we actually need to address inequity, I believe. I think any grant system or any public dollar should go to any farmer. And when you look at one thing that states' departments of agriculture have been pretty good at is making sure that every farmer has an opportunity in it. It's at that lending and at that the capital that a farmer just needs a simple cash flow loan. It really depends on who you are that determines whether you get that loan or not. So I think that needs to get fixed. Inherently with fruits and vegetables, they're naturally more biodiverse in the first place. Specialty crop growers are the ones who are kind of left out of any benefit from the federal subsidy system. It wasn't until 2014 Farm Bill that you could actually get federally subsidized crop insurance as a fruit and vegetable grower. The thing we're supposed to be eating 5 times a day gets no insurance, right? You know, but cotton for jeans, try to eat your jeans, you know, but the cotton guy, you know, gets hit by a tornado. He gets the full crop value of his crop at the end of the year. That's not fair. But these programs, just getting them funded, which is why I thought $1 billion was a really good number, would really have an incredible impact on the specialty crop economy, the more biodiverse, in so many states, growers that are, it's one of the few things that grows like in every state is fruits and vegetables, except like maybe Alaska. They still grow there, but it's a short season. But that was a powerful economic opportunity. So I think targeting the right sectors with the right stuff, lending boards, big issue. That needs to get fixed. Continuing to support specialty crop growers with public dollars, that's easy. The impact to the end consumer, when a low-income family on Medicaid can go and get the food that they need to keep their family healthy, that's not going to happen if we don't have a robust specialty crop agriculture system. So that's how I see it, if that makes sense. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, I love the way the direction you went with that.
Okay.
So, closing thoughts,
Oh,
Michelle.
jeez. I do it every time.
No, I did.
Well, my mom if she was still alive, she'd tell you if you ask me what time it is, I'll tell you how a clock is built. So I apologize for that.
Tell us, we're now going to go soon into breakout rooms and meet other people. What is your suggestion, the lessons of how not to work in silos, how to partner better to make better change?
Well, the one thing I learned with advocacy, and again, our success with nutrition incentives was, I mean, I'm a chef. I brought my argument to it. You know, you support specialty growers, it strengthens my supply chain so my customers can have more, and people who can't afford to eat in my restaurant can put the same heirloom tomato in front of their kids for dinner tonight. That's my argument. But, you know, Rayleigh's argument was my Title I, you know, high school students working part-time are doing a better job because they're being fed better. And an insurer in Tulsa, Oklahoma, told Frank Lucas that their mailroom workers, their lower wage workers, weren't calling in sick as much because they had access to double up food bucks. There are people in different sectors of our economy, of business, in our communities who benefit from these things. And if there's one thing that I've learned, and the late Gus Schumacher taught me this, I'm going to try not to get emotional because I really miss him, is that decision makers, lawmakers, make decisions based on what's relevant to them. And if you don't understand that when you're crafting your argument, your chance of your argument sticking goes down by about 95%. So with Frank Lucas, it was, we're going to be all about small business. And we proved that 3,600 farmers put more land in production. They bought transplanters. They built hoop houses. They hired more people. They bought more gas. They diversified their crop plantings to meet a new diverse market. It was a classic small business incubation program. It wasn't a food insecurity program. So just understand who your decision makers are, why they make their decision, and think of everybody else in the community that's going to benefit from that domino effect from food, because it affects human health, environmental health, economic health, cultural health, community health. It's the one single subject that affects all that stuff. So there's someone in each of those sectors that's going to be an ally of yours. Let them bring their argument from their perspective, and then the lawmaker understands this is something everybody wants. And good luck with that.
Thank you both so much. That was great. Thank you.